It is April 30th, 1945. The most wanted man in the world is cornered. Soviet forces are closing in on Berlin from all sides. The city is collapsing. Inside a concrete bunker buried beneath the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler knows the end is near. He has already said his goodbyes. He has married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, just one day before. And now, according to every official historical account, he walked into his private quarters. He sat down on a sofa and shot himself in the head. Eva Braun took cyanide beside him. Their bodies were carried outside and doused in petrol. They were burned in the Reich Chancellery garden, on Hitler's own orders. Soviet soldiers discovered the charred remains shortly after. That is the official story. But here is the question that has never fully gone away. Did it actually happen that way? But before we get to the theories, we need to look at something uncomfortable. The official account of Hitler's death rests almost entirely on eyewitness testimonies, and eyewitnesses who were, at the time, either Nazi loyalists or Soviet soldiers with their own political agenda. The Soviets were the first to reach the bunker, and Joseph Stalin had every reason to control the narrative. For years, Stalin publicly insisted that Hitler was alive, not because he believed it, but because a living Hitler kept the West paranoid and divided. The physical evidence the Soviets presented was thin, a few bone fragments. A partial jawbone, they claimed, matched Hitler's dental records, and a skull fragment with a bullet hole, which they said was Hitler's. But in 2018, French forensic scientists were finally given access to that skull fragment. Their conclusion was stunning. The skull did not belong to Hitler. It belonged to a woman under 40 years old. The Soviets had been displaying the wrong skull for over 70 years. Now, does this prove Hitler escaped? No, it does not. But it does prove that the physical evidence presented by the Soviets was unreliable. And that opens a door that historians have never been able to fully close. So if there is doubt, however small, about the physical evidence, the next question becomes, could he have actually gotten out? The answer, logistically speaking, is more possible than most people want to admit. By April 1945, the Nazi regime had already built one of the most sophisticated escape infrastructures in history. It was called Odessa, Organisation der ehemaligen SS-Angehörigen, a secret network designed to help high-ranking Nazis disappear after the war. Through Odessa, thousands of Nazi officers successfully fled Europe using forged documents and false identities. A series of safe houses stretched from Germany all the way to South America. The routes they used even had a name. They called them the Rat Lines. Catholic institutions and corrupt Vatican officials quietly facilitated the movement of thousands of wanted men. Sympathetic governments in Spain and Argentina did the same. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, used exactly this network to reach Argentina in 1950. He lived there under a false name for 10 years, before Israeli intelligence finally tracked him down. If Eichmann could disappear so completely, the question is not whether the network existed. It clearly did. The question is whether Hitler used it. There are those who claim he did, and they point to the submarines. In the final weeks of the war, several German U-boats made unexplained voyages into the South Atlantic, without clear military objectives. Two German submarines, U-530 and U-977, surrendered to Argentine authorities in July and August of 1945. Months after Germany's official surrender, both captains were interrogated extensively. Both denied carrying any passengers. But the question of what, or who, those submarines were actually carrying has never been definitively answered. And then there is Argentina itself. Juan Perón's government had openly welcomed Nazi war criminals. Between 1945 and 1955, an estimated 5,000 former Nazis settled in Argentina, many with full knowledge and protection of the Perón regime. It was, in every practical sense, the perfect place to disappear. The theories about Hitler in Argentina are not just conspiracy forum speculation. In 2014, the FBI declassified thousands of documents through the Freedom of Information Act. and some of what was inside was difficult to dismiss. One document, dated 1945, describes a credible informant reporting that Hitler had arrived in Argentina via submarine. The informant claimed Hitler was living in the foothills of the Andes, in the Patagonia region, under the protection of a local German expatriate community. The FBI took it seriously enough to investigate. They were not alone. The CIA, British intelligence, and Argentine federal police all opened files on the possibility of Hitler surviving the war. None of them conclusively closed those files with a confirmed death. Then there are the photographs. In 2011, an Argentine newspaper published photographs allegedly taken in the 1950s in a remote region of Patagonia. The images showed an elderly European man living in extreme isolation, attended by a small group of loyal companions. His identity was never confirmed, but the location, a small town called Bariloche in the Argentine Lake District, was already known as a haven for former Nazi officers. Several high-ranking Nazis, including Erich Priebke and other SS officers, had lived openly in Bariloche for decades. The town even had a German-language newspaper, German schools, and German social clubs. It was, in the words of one historian, less like a South American town, and more like a piece of Bavaria transplanted to the Andes. And at the center of it all was a man named Ludwig Freude, a German banker with direct ties to both the Nazi regime and Juan Perón. Freude is believed to have personally managed the financial transfer of Nazi funds into Argentina before the war ended. Millions of dollars in gold, art, and currency moved through his network. Whether Hitler was among the people those funds were meant to support, nobody has ever proven. But the infrastructure to make it happen, the money, the network, the safe location, the political protection, was all there. So we have a flawed physical evidence record, a sophisticated escape network, and declassified intelligence files, and a region of Argentina that was essentially a Nazi sanctuary. It sounds compelling, but now we need to look at what history actually confirms, because the evidence on the other side is also significant. Let us start with the eyewitnesses. Over a dozen people were inside or near the Führer bunker. They were there during the final hours of the Third Reich. Their testimonies were collected independently, across different countries, over many years. They remain remarkably consistent on the core facts. Hitler shot himself. Eva Braun took cyanide. Their bodies were burned. None of the witnesses ever changed that core account, even those who were later captured, tortured, or offered immunity. Then there is the dental evidence. While the skull fragment was officially discredited in 2018, however, the jawbone fragment the Soviets preserved is a different matter. In 2018, the same French forensic team that debunked the skull also examined the teeth. Their conclusion was that the dental remains were consistent with historical records of Hitler's teeth. These teeth were unusually distinctive due to extensive dental work. That is not definitive proof of death, but it serves as significant corroborating evidence. And then there is the broader historical argument. Hitler was 56 years old in 1945. He was in a state of rapidly deteriorating health. He suffered from Parkinson's disease and severe digestive problems. He was heavily dependent on a cocktail of drugs administered by his personal physician. The idea of this physically broken man successfully navigating a submarine voyage strains credibility. The thought of him crossing an ocean to build a new life in secret is highly unlikely. Most serious historians today accept that Hitler died in the bunker on April 30th, 1945. Not because the evidence is perfect. It is not. The alternative requires believing that dozens of independent witnesses all lied consistently for decades. It would mean multiple intelligence agencies failed while the world's most recognizable man vanished. That is a very large number of things that would all have to be true at once. So where does all of this leave us? The official history says Hitler died in that bunker on April 30th, 1945. And the weight of credible historical evidence does support that conclusion. But the story has cracks. A skull that turned out to belong to someone else. Submarines that arrived in Argentina months after the war ended with no satisfactory explanation. a country that openly sheltered thousands of Nazi war criminals. This happened with the full knowledge of the Argentinian government. Declassified FBI documents describing credible reports of a surviving Hitler. The United States government took these documents seriously enough to investigate, and a region of Patagonia that, to this day, carries the fingerprints of these people. They were people who had very good reasons to disappear. History is rarely as clean as the textbooks suggest. The most dangerous assumption we can make is to believe that powerful people always get caught, or to believe that crimes always get solved, and the truth always surfaces in the end. Sometimes people disappear. Sometimes the evidence burns with the body. Sometimes the most powerful man in the world, Adolf Hitler, walks out of history, and nobody can say for certain where he went. Did Hitler actually escape? The honest answer, the answer that history itself is forced to give, is this: probably not. But not certainly, and in the space between probably and certainly, that is where history keeps some of its darkest secrets. If you want to go deeper, the links, documents, and sources are in the description below. And if you think the truth is still out there, tell us in the comments. Beyond the textbook, where history goes deeper than what you were taught.